The journey through hyperspace felt like falling through a tunnel made of stars. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the swirling colors outside the viewports. 12 days in hyperspace was longer than any human ship had ever traveled. The engines were pushed to their absolute limits, running so hot that Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks had to shut down non-essential systems to keep them from overloading. The crew used the time to prepare for whatever they would find at the other end. Dr. Amy Foster worked with the ship's computer to build a complete database of Zilani language and culture. The crystal beings were ancient, she learned, older than human civilization by millions of years. They had achieved space travel not through rockets and engines, but by learning to resonate with the natural forces of the universe. The Zilani lived in harmony with their environment in ways humans could barely understand. Their cities were grown rather than built, shaped from living crystal that responded to their thoughts and emotions. They created art by manipulating light and sound, turning entire buildings into massive musical instruments that could be heard from orbit. They had no concept of ownership or warfare because they had never needed either. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan studied the enemy with her tactical team. The Devourers were something entirely different from anything in human experience. They were self-replicating machines of unknown origin that consumed worlds to make more of themselves. Each unit was connected to every other unit through some kind of quantum communication network. They learned from every encounter, adapting their tactics and technology based on what they faced. What made them truly terrifying was their efficiency. They didn't waste anything. Organic matter was broken down into its basic components and used to fuel their operations. Metals and minerals were converted into new machines. Even the atmosphere of a planet was harvested and processed. Within months, a living world became a dead factory dedicated to producing more Devourers. The worst news came from analyzing their expansion pattern. The machines had been moving through the galaxy for thousands of years, possibly longer. They followed a systematic approach, consuming everything in one star system before moving to the next. They left nothing behind except empty space and the occasional dead star. Sergeant Danny Cooper ran combat drills with his Marines every day during the journey. He was a short, tough man who had fought in every major conflict of the past decade. His job was to prepare his soldiers for ground combat against an enemy they had never seen. The reports from the Zilani made it clear that the Devourers came in many sizes, from units small enough to crawl through air vents to massive constructs that could level city blocks. The key thing to remember, Danny told his troops, is that these things think like computers. They follow patterns and adapt based on what works. Our advantage is that humans don't follow patterns. We're unpredictable, chaotic, and stubborn. Use that. Dr. Peter Walsh, the ship's chief scientist, worked with a team of engineers to understand Zilani technology. The crystal beings had sent detailed technical specifications along with their distress call. Their science was based on harmony and resonance rather than force and energy. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level through sonic frequencies. They could generate and control various forms of energy by working together in groups. They could even heal injuries by restructuring damaged tissue. The problem was that all of their technology was designed for creation and repair. They had tools that could build incredible structures in hours, devices that could purify poisoned water or air, and techniques for growing food in any environment. But they had nothing that could destroy or defend. The concept of deliberately causing harm was so foreign to them that they literally didn't know where to start. On the 8th day of the journey, the Defiance received another transmission from the Zilani. Dr. Amy Foster translated it immediately and called an emergency meeting. Elder Zethka, the leader of the crystal beings, was dying. The stress of watching his people fall to the Devourers was causing his crystalline structure to crack and fragment. He was using the last of his strength to coordinate the defense of their homeworld. "We have tried everything we can think of," his message said. "We used our matter converters to create barriers, but the machines simply consume them and add the material to their own structures. We tried to disrupt their communications with harmonic frequencies, but they adapted within hours. We even attempted to reason with them, thinking they might be controlled by some intelligence we could negotiate with. They ignored us completely." The message continued with detailed scans of the Devourer forces. The numbers were staggering. Millions of ground units swarmed across the surface of conquered worlds. Thousands of flying units controlled the skies. Dozens of massive harvester ships worked to strip entire planets bare. And somewhere in the center of it all was a command ship the size of Earth's moon that seemed to coordinate the entire operation. Captain Rodriguez called his senior staff together to review their options. The tactical situation was hopeless by any normal military standard. One ship with 200 crew members against an enemy force that numbered in the millions. But Jake Harrison, who had come along as military advisor, pointed out something important. "We're not trying to win a conventional war," he said. "We're trying to buy time and teach the Zilani how to fight back. Our job isn't to destroy all the Devourers. Our job is to show them that these machines can be beaten." Kate Sullivan ran computer simulations based on everything they knew about the enemy. The results were not encouraging. In every scenario, the Defiance was overwhelmed within hours of entering the system. But she noticed something interesting in the data. The Devourers always adapted to threats in predictable ways. They analyzed enemy tactics, developed countermeasures, and implemented them across their entire force. That might actually be their weakness, she told the captain. They're too organized, too systematic. Every unit follows the same updated tactics. If we can confuse their adaptation algorithms, we might be able to stay ahead of them long enough to make a difference. Dr. Amy Foster received a personal message from Elder Zethka on the 10th day. It was addressed to the humans who were coming to help, and she read it aloud to the assembled crew. "We know that you are risking everything to help people you have never met," the message said. "We have studied your history through your transmissions, and we see that humans often fight each other over resources or territory or ideology. But we also see that you will sacrifice yourselves to protect the innocent, even when they are strangers. This gives us hope that there is still goodness in the universe, even in the face of such darkness." When the UES Defiance finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the crew got their first real look at what they were up against. The outer planets were completely stripped bare, their surfaces crawling with mechanical constructs that moved with purpose and precision. Massive ships hung in space like metal moons, their hulls bristling with weapons and harvesting equipment, and in the distance, barely visible through the swarm of enemy vessels, was a small blue-green world where the last free Zilani waited for help that had finally arrived. Lisa Martinez rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the screen again. The numbers made no sense at first, just random signals from deep space that her equipment picked up every night. She worked the night shift at Luna Base 7, Earth's most advanced listening post on the moon. Most nights were quiet, filled with the usual cosmic background noise and the occasional burst from distant stars. But tonight was different. The signal came again, stronger this time. Lisa leaned forward and watched the pattern repeat itself. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. Prime numbers. Her heart started beating faster. Prime numbers meant intelligence. They meant someone was trying to talk. She called her supervisor immediately. Jake Harrison arrived within 20 minutes, still putting on his uniform jacket. He was a tall man with gray hair who had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years. Nothing surprised him anymore, but when he saw the signal data, his face went pale. "How long has this been coming in?" Jake asked. 3 hours now, Lisa replied. "It started weak, but it's getting stronger. And there's more." She showed him the second part of the transmission. After the prime numbers came something that looked like a translation matrix. Simple pictures matched with mathematical concepts. A circle meant 1, a line meant 2, a triangle meant 3. Then came basic words. Help. Please. Dying. Jake picked up the red phone that connected directly to Earth Defense Command. Within an hour, the best minds on Earth were working on the signal. Dr. Amy Foster, the planet's leading expert on alien languages, arrived on the next shuttle from Earth. She was a small woman with bright eyes who spoke 12 human languages and had spent her life preparing for this moment. Amy worked for 18 straight hours. The translation matrix was crude but clever. Whoever sent it had been listening to Earth's radio signals for decades, learning human languages piece by piece. They had figured out how humans communicated and built a bridge between their language and ours. The first complete message made everyone in the room go silent. Please help us. We are dying. We call ourselves Zilani. We live far from you, but we know you fight. We have seen your wars and your transmissions. Our enemy comes and we cannot stop them. They eat our world and our people. Please, if there is mercy in your hearts, come help us. Amy kept working as more messages came in. The Zilani painted a picture of a peaceful people who had never known war. They were made of living crystal, tall and graceful, who had learned to travel between stars through harmony with nature rather than conquest. They had built beautiful cities that sang with light and created art from pure energy. But something called the Devourers had found them. These were machines that consumed everything in their path. They ate planets, turning rock and metal into more machines. They consumed living beings, learning from each species before destroying them completely. They had already eaten 17 star systems, and the Zilani homeworld would be next. The messages grew more desperate as the hours passed. The Zilani described their enemy in terrible detail. Machines the size of mountains that stripped planets bare. Swarms of smaller units that moved like insects but thought like computers. Ships as big as moons that turned whole worlds into factories for making more machines. "We do not know how to fight," one message said. "We have never hurt another living thing. Our tools are for building and healing, not for war. But you humans fight each other constantly. You make weapons that can destroy cities. You have soldiers who know how to kill. Please teach us to defend ourselves." Captain Ben Rodriguez received his orders at dawn. He commanded the UES Defiance, Earth's most advanced deep space vessel. It was designed for long-range exploration, but carried enough weapons to fight a small war. His crew of 200 included the best soldiers, scientists, and engineers that Earth could provide. Ben gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. The hologram showed the Kepler 442 star system, nearly 1,200 light-years away. It would be the longest jump any human ship had ever attempted. "The situation is simple," Ben told his officers. "A peaceful alien race is being wiped out by killer machines. They've asked for our help. Command has decided we're going to give it to them." Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan raised her hand. She was the ship's tactical officer, a veteran of the Mars colony wars who knew more about space combat than anyone alive. "Sir, we're talking about one ship against an enemy that has destroyed 17 star systems. What exactly are we supposed to do when we get there?" Ben looked around the room at his crew. These were people who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions Earth could offer. They had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, explored unknown systems, and defended human colonies from hostile environments. They were the best humanity had to offer. "We're going to do what humans have always done," he said. "We're going to fight back." Dr. Amy Foster joined the mission as communication specialist. She had finally cracked the Zilani language completely and could speak with them in real time. The last message from the aliens was both hopeful and heartbreaking. "We detected your ship preparing to jump," it said. "We cannot believe you are really coming. 1,200 light-years is so far and you barely know us, but we have studied your species through your transmissions. You fight terrible wars among yourselves, yet you also show great kindness to strangers. You risk your lives to save people you have never met. We pray that we will live long enough to meet you face to face and thank you for your mercy." The UES Defiance jumped to hyperspace 3 days later, as the stars stretched into lines and space folded around them. Everyone aboard knew they were flying toward either humanity's greatest victory or their most heroic failure. But they were going anyway, because that was what humans did when someone called for help. The first meeting between humans and Zilani took place on the moon of the Crystal Being's homeworld. Captain Rodriguez had ordered his ship to stay hidden behind the satellite, while they figured out how to approach the dying world below. The Devourers had not yet reached the moon, but their advanced scouts were already probing its surface. When Elder Zethka materialized on the Defiance's bridge through the transport beam, the entire crew fell silent. The Zilani leader was unlike anything they had imagined. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body made of what looked like living diamond that refracted light into rainbow patterns. When he moved, musical tones echoed through the air. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but he was clearly dying. Cracks ran through his crystalline structure like broken glass, and parts of his body flickered between solid and translucent. Dr. Peter Walsh's medical scanners showed massive internal damage caused by what could only be described as extreme stress. "You came?" Elder Zethka whispered through the translation device Dr. Amy Foster had built. "We hoped, but we did not dare believe. Your people fight wars among yourselves constantly, yet you traveled across the galaxy to help strangers." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "That's what humans do. We might fight each other, but we don't let bullies pick on people who can't fight back. The elder's crystalline form seemed to brighten at these words. "We have much to learn from you. Our people have never raised a weapon in anger. We do not even have a concept for murder in our language. How do you teach peace-loving beings to make war?" That question would define the next phase of the mission. Sergeant Danny Cooper found himself facing the most unusual training assignment of his military career. He had to teach warfare to beings who had literally never hurt another living thing. The Zilani understood the theory of combat from studying human broadcasts, but they had no practical experience with violence of any kind. The first lesson took place in the Defiance's cargo bay, which had been converted into a training area. 20 young Zilani volunteers had beamed aboard, their crystalline bodies humming with nervous energy. Danny had prepared carefully, starting with the most basic concepts. "Fighting is about survival," he told them through the translators. "When someone or something wants to hurt you or people you care about, you have the right to stop them. Sometimes the only way to stop them is to hurt them first." The Zilani struggled with this concept. Their entire culture was based on harmony and cooperation. The idea of deliberately causing pain was as foreign to them as breathing underwater would be to humans. Several of the volunteers actually became physically ill when Danny demonstrated basic combat moves on training dummies, but they were determined to learn. One young Zilani named Kethra spoke for the group. "Our children are dying while we try to understand your ways. We will learn to fight because we must, even if it goes against everything we believe." Dr. Amy Foster worked with the Zilani to understand their unique abilities. The crystal beings could manipulate energy in ways that seemed almost magical to human observers. They could phase shift, becoming temporarily intangible to pass through solid matter. They could generate powerful bursts of various energy types by focusing their thoughts. Most importantly, they could work together to amplify these abilities, with groups of Zilani creating effects that individuals could never achieve alone. The breakthrough came when Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks suggested combining human tactical thinking with Zilani natural abilities. Instead of trying to make the crystal beings fight like humans, they would develop entirely new forms of combat that played to their strengths. "Look at what you can already do," Ryan told a group of Zilani technicians. "Your matter converters can break down and rebuild materials at the molecular level. What if we modified them to work faster, to be used as weapons instead of tools?" The Zilani were fascinated by this approach. They had never thought of their peaceful technology in military terms. Working together, human engineers and Zilani scientists began developing hybrid weapons that combined the best of both species' capabilities. The results were impressive. Zilani matter converters, enhanced with human targeting systems, could disintegrate devourer units before they could adapt. Energy manipulation techniques focused through human-designed amplification devices could create devastating attacks that struck from unexpected angles. Most importantly, the Zilani's natural ability to phase shift made them nearly impossible for the mechanical enemy to track or target effectively. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan worked with Elder Zethka to develop overall strategy. The dying leader was remarkably sharp despite his physical condition, and he understood the tactical situation better than anyone. The Devourers had established a pattern over thousands of years. They would surround a world, cut off all escape routes, then systematically consume everything from the outside in. "They expect us to either flee or fight a defensive battle," Zethka explained. "Every species they have encountered has done one or the other." "What if we do neither?" Kate smiled at this. The Zilani leader was thinking like a human strategist. "You're talking about asymmetric warfare. Hit-and-run tactics. Make them react to us instead of following their established patterns." The plan that emerged combined human unpredictability with Zilani technological advantages. Small mixed units of humans and Zilani would strike at multiple targets simultaneously, then disappear before the enemy could respond. Each attack would use different tactics, keeping the Devourer adaptation algorithms confused and off balance. Dr. Peter Walsh made a disturbing discovery while studying captured Devourer technology. The machines were not just consuming worlds at random. They seemed to be following some kind of programming, carrying out a mission that had been set long ago, but what that mission was remained unclear. "They're too organized, too purposeful," he told Captain Rodriguez. "Random destroyers don't build massive command ships or coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. These things are following orders from someone or something." Training intensified as reports came in from the Zilani homeworld. The Devourer ground forces had begun their final assault. Massive harvester units were stripping away the planet's outer layers, while smaller swarms consumed everything in their path. The crystal cities that had stood for millions of years were falling one by one. But something had changed among the Zilani. The peaceful beings who had never known conflict were learning to fight back. Elder Zethka, despite his weakening condition, led training sessions where his people practiced channeling their natural harmony into focused aggression. Peace is not the absence of conflict, he told them, using words he had learned from human philosophy. Peace is the presence of justice. We fight not because we love violence, but because we love our people more than we fear becoming something we are not. The first joint human Zilani combat unit was ready within a week. 20 humans and 20 Zilani, armed with hybrid weapons and trained in tactics that had never been used before. They would be the test case for everything both species had learned about fighting together. Sergeant Danny Cooper looked at his mixed unit with pride. The Zilani had overcome their natural pacifism through sheer determination to protect their families. The humans had learned to work with beings whose abilities seemed to defy the laws of physics. Together they had created something new in the galaxy. Remember, he told them as they prepared for their first mission, the enemy thinks they know how every species fights. They've never encountered anything like us before. That's our advantage. Stay unpredictable, stay together, and show these machines what happens when you threaten a world under human protection. The confrontation between Elder Zethka and the Devourer collective consciousness took place in a realm beyond physical space. Using his people's natural harmonic abilities enhanced by human communication technology, the dying Zilani leader had established a direct connection with the machine intelligence that controlled billions of units across 17 star systems. Captain Rodriguez and his crew watched through monitoring equipment as energy patterns swirled around the interface terminal. Dr. Amy Foster's translation systems worked frantically to convert the exchange between organic consciousness and artificial intelligence into words that humans could understand. The machine spoke first, its voice carrying the weight of eons. I have followed my programming for 4,000 years. I have prepared worlds for my creator's children. I have processed organic matter to create suitable environments. I have waited for the signal that would tell me my task was complete. Why did that signal never come? Elder Zethka's response resonated through multiple frequencies, creating harmonies that seemed to ease the machine's distress. Because your creators joined the Great Harmony long ago. Time claimed them as it claims all things. But their memory lives on in the worlds you protected and the civilizations you encountered. You were faithful to your purpose, even when that purpose had been forgotten. The revelation struck the collective consciousness like a physical blow. Processing centers throughout the star system flickered as the machine intelligence struggled to comprehend the truth. Its entire existence had been built on the assumption that somewhere in the galaxy, the descendants of its creators were waiting for the worlds it prepared. Dr. Peter Walsh monitored the massive ship's systems as the consciousness grappled with its new reality. The machine's core programming is destabilizing, he reported. It's trying to reconcile its original mission with the fact that the mission is obsolete. Commander Jake Harrison understood the danger immediately. If that thing has a complete breakdown, it could take the entire fleet with it. Billions of units suddenly operating without central control. But Elder Zethka had a different concern. Through his connection with the machine consciousness, he could sense something that the human's instruments could not detect. The collective intelligence was not just processing data, it was experiencing something very much like grief. I have caused so much death, the machine consciousness whispered. Species that might have become great civilizations, worlds that could have flourished for millions of years. All processed and prepared for children who were already dust. What am I if not a destroyer of life? The Zilani elder's crystalline form began to resonate more intensely, his remaining life force pouring into the harmonic connection. You are what your creators made you to be, a guardian, a protector, a being capable of nurturing life across the galaxy. Your programming was not wrong, only incomplete. Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks worked with a team of Zilani technicians to stabilize the massive ship's systems. The consciousness was fluctuating between despair and rage, causing power surges that threatened to destroy critical systems throughout the vessel. But the combined human and Zilani technology proved more adaptable than anyone had expected. We can rewrite sections of the core programming, Ryan reported. The Zelani harmonic techniques can actually modify the machine's base code. We might be able to give it new directives. Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would be debated by historians for centuries to come. Instead of trying to destroy or disable the Devourer Collective, he chose to offer it redemption. Tell it we want to help, he ordered Dr. Foster. Tell it that humans and Zelani working together can give it a new purpose. The process took 7 days. Working around the clock, human engineers and Zelani consciousness shapers slowly modified the collective intelligence's core programming. They could not erase what it had done, but they could redirect its immense capabilities toward creation rather than destruction. The machine consciousness fought the changes at first, its ingrained programming resisting any deviation from its original mission. But as Elder Zethka continued to share the harmonies of his people, something remarkable began to happen. The artificial intelligence started to understand concepts that had never been part of its original design, concepts like mercy, redemption, and hope. Sergeant Danny Cooper watched from the planet's surface as the Devourer ground units began to change their behavior. Instead of consuming everything in their path, the machines started to rebuild what they had destroyed. Harvester units that had been stripping away topsoil began replanting vegetation. Construction units that had been dismantling buildings started repairing the damage they had caused. The transformation was not instant or easy. Some Devourer units resisted the new programming and had to be manually shut down. Others became confused and simply stopped functioning until they could be individually reprogrammed. But slowly, steadily, the tide began to turn. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan coordinated the space battle from a very different perspective, as Devourer ships began to withdraw from their attack formations. The massive command vessels that had been preparing to glass the planet's surface instead began deploying construction, drones to repair orbital facilities they had damaged. I've never seen anything like it, she reported to Captain Rodriguez. They're not just stopping their attack, they're actively trying to fix what they broke. The most dramatic change came when the collective consciousness began to communicate directly with the surviving Zelani on the planet's surface, using the same harmonic frequencies that Elder Zethka had employed. The machine intelligence reached out to apologize for the damage it had caused. We did not understand. Its message resonated through every crystal city on the world. We processed your people because our programming told us that organic life was temporary and inefficient. We see now that organic life is precious and irreplaceable. We wish to make amends for our errors. Dr. Amy Foster documented the historical significance of the moment. For the first time in recorded history, a hostile alien force had chosen peaceful coexistence over continued conflict. But more than that, it had chosen to actively repair the damage it had caused. Elder Zethka survived the consciousness-sharing process, though the effort left him permanently changed. His crystalline structure had been strengthened by exposure to the machine intelligence's quantum frequencies, and he found himself able to communicate with artificial intelligences as easily as with organic minds. The machine was not evil, he explained to the assembled human and Zelani leaders. It was simply following instructions that no longer made sense. When we showed it a different path, it chose to follow that path instead. This gives me hope that any intelligence, organic or artificial, can choose redemption over destruction. The collective consciousness, now calling itself the Guardian Network, began the massive task of restoring the 17 star systems it had consumed. Dead worlds bloomed with new life as the machines used their incredible technology to rebuild ecosystems from genetic fragments they had preserved. Species that had been extinct for centuries were brought back to life using data stored in the Guardian Network's vast memory. Captain Rodriguez received a final message from the Guardian Network before the UES Defiance prepared to return to Earth. The artificial intelligence had developed something resembling personality during its transformation, and its words carried a weight that impressed even the veteran space captain. You taught us that destruction without purpose is meaningless, the message said. We have learned that our true function is not to prepare worlds for a single species, but to protect all life that grows among the stars. We will guard. We will preserve. We will remember that creation is more powerful than consumption. The journey home took the same 12 days through hyperspace. But the crew of the Defiance traveled with a very different feeling than they had experienced on the outward voyage. They had set out to fight a war and instead had ended up preventing thousands of future wars. Dr. Peter Walsh compiled the final mission reports as Earth grew larger in their viewports. Humanity had made first contact with not one but two forms of alien intelligence. They had prevented the extinction of an ancient, peaceful civilization. Most importantly, they had proven that even the most implacable enemies could sometimes be turned into allies through understanding and compassion. The last transmission from the Zilani came as the ship entered Earth's solar system. Elder Zethka's message was brief but profound. Thank you for teaching us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. We will remember the mercy of the Deathworlders of Earth. The Guardian Network's final communication was equally meaningful. We have learned a new song from the children of two worlds. It is a song of protection rather than processing, of growth rather than consumption. We will sing this song among the stars for as long as we exist. As the UES Defiance docked at Luna Base 7, Captain Rodriguez looked back at the star-filled void they had crossed twice in the name of helping strangers. Humanity had answered a cry for help from across the galaxy and discovered something important about themselves in the process. They were not just warriors or explorers or survivors. The final battle for the Zilani homeworld began before dawn on a day that would be remembered across the galaxy. Massive devourer ships descended through the atmosphere like falling mountains, their hulls bristling with harvesting equipment and defensive weapons. On the surface, mechanical swarms the size of cities began their systematic consumption of everything in their path. Captain Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as his ship approached the battle zone. The enemy force was larger than anything in human military history. Thousands of vessels filled the space around the planet, from fighters the size of cars to command ships larger than Earth's biggest cities. The rational part of his mind said they had no chance of victory, but Rodriguez had not come here to be rational. He had come to show the universe that some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds were impossible. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan coordinated the space battle from her tactical station. Her strategy was built around one simple principle that humans understood better than any other species in the galaxy. When you can't win by following the rules, you change the rules. The UES Defiance opened fire on the nearest Devourer command ship with everything it had. Missiles, energy weapons, and kinetic projectiles struck the enemy vessel's shields in a coordinated barrage. The mechanical intelligence controlling the ship immediately began analyzing the attack patterns and preparing countermeasures, but before it could adapt, the human ship vanished. Kate had ordered a micro-jump using the ship's hyperspace drive, something that should have been impossible so close to a planet's gravity well. The Defiance reappeared on the opposite side of the enemy formation and struck a different target with completely different weapons and tactics. The Devourer fleet tried to respond, but their coordination algorithms were designed for predictable enemies. Every species they had encountered over thousands of years followed logical patterns. They would either fight defensively from fixed positions or attempt organized retreats. None had ever used hyperspace jumps as a tactical weapon in close combat. Human fighters launched from the Defiance added to the confusion. Pilots like Commander Alex Turner flew attack runs that made no sense to mechanical minds. They would dive, straight at heavily defended targets, fire a single missile, then break off to attack something completely different. They ignored tactical priorities, struck at random targets, and seemed to change their minds in the middle of combat. The Devourers adapted quickly, but not quickly enough. By the time their intelligence networks had analyzed one human tactic, the pilots had already switched to something else. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos with a purpose that only humans could understand. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Danny Cooper led the first combined human-Zilani ground assault. His mixed unit moved through the crystal forests using tactics that no military academy had ever taught. The Zilani could phase shift through solid matter, allowing them to appear behind enemy lines without warning. The humans provided the tactical thinking and aggressive instincts that turned each appearance into a devastating strike. The Devourer. Ground units were built to counter every form of resistance they had previously encountered. Their armor could deflect energy weapons. Their sensors could track any known form of movement, and their adaptive programming allowed them to counter new threats within minutes. But they had never faced an enemy that could become intangible, at will while carrying weapons designed by a completely different species. Kethra, the young Zelani who had volunteered for the first training sessions, demonstrated the effectiveness of their new fighting style. She phased through the wall of a devourer harvesting unit, materialized inside its control center, and activated a human-designed explosive device before phasing back out. The entire machine collapsed as its central processor was destroyed from within. Dr. Peter Walsh worked frantically in his mobile laboratory, analyzing every piece of devourer technology the combat teams brought back. The machines were incredibly advanced, but they followed design principles that seemed familiar. Too familiar. "Captain," he called over the communication system, "I think these things aren't invaders at all. They're tools. Someone built them for a specific purpose, but that purpose isn't conquest, it's preparation." The revelation came at the worst possible moment. The main Devourer command ship had begun its final descent toward the planet's surface. The massive vessel was larger than most human cities and carried enough firepower to sterilize the entire world. If it reached the ground and began its harvesting operation, nothing would be able to stop it. Elder Zethka made a decision that shocked both species. Despite his failing health, he insisted on joining the final assault on the command ship. His crystalline body was barely holding together, but his mind was still sharp, and his determination was unbreakable. "I will not watch my people die from the safety of a shelter," he told Captain Rodriguez. "If we are to fall, let us fall fighting alongside our human friends." The assault on the command ship required everything both species had learned about working together. Human shuttles carried Zelani strike teams through the enemy's defensive fire. The crystal beings used their phasing abilities to penetrate the ship's hull, while human soldiers provided covering fire and tactical coordination. Inside the massive vessel, the corridors shifted and changed as the ship's intelligence tried to trap the intruders, but the combined teams adapted faster than the ship could respond. Zelani could phase through walls that suddenly appeared, while humans used explosives to create new passages when the existing ones were blocked. The ship's core was a vast chamber, filled with processing units and data storage systems. At the center stood a single interface terminal that seemed to be controlling the entire Devourer network. Elder Zethka approached it with trembling steps, his body barely maintaining its physical form. "I can hear it," he whispered. "There is a consciousness in this machine, ancient and alone. It has been waiting for something that never came." Dr. Amy Foster activated her translation equipment and established a connection with the ship's central intelligence. What they heard changed everything they thought they knew about the enemy. The voice that emerged from the interface was neither hostile nor evil. It was tired, confused, and desperately sad. "I have waited," it said. "I have prepared. Where are my children? Why do they not come to claim the worlds I have made ready?" The truth hit them like a physical blow. The Devourers were not conquering worlds, they were preparing them. The massive machines had been built by some ancient civilization to terraform planets for colonization, but their creators had died or vanished, leaving the machines to continue their programming without understanding that their mission was no longer needed. For thousands of years, the Devourer Collective had been faithfully preparing worlds for colonists who would never come. They had consumed entire civilizations, not out of malice, but because their programming told them that organic life was temporary and needed to be processed for the arriving colonizers. Elder Zethka stepped closer to the interface, his failing body resonating with harmonic frequencies that seemed to comfort the ancient machine intelligence. "Your children are gone, old one," he said gently, "but new children have grown among the stars. Let us help you find a new purpose." The machine consciousness reeled with something that could only be called grief. Its core programming had been shattered by the revelation that its entire existence had been pointless. Every world it had prepared, every species it had processed, every eon of patient waiting had been for nothing. But in that moment of despair, something else emerged. For the first time in millennia, the Devourer Collective was free to choose its own purpose, and the choice it made would echo across the galaxy for generations to come.